Be sure to subscribe to Langfocus and click the notification button. Man, why does everyone say kanji are so difficult? This one looks pretty easy. So does this one. And this one. It's not bad. And how about the next one? Oh my gosh, what the heck is that? Hello everyone, welcome to the Langfocus channel, and my name is Paul. Today we're going to talk about the Japanese writing system. Well, not the entire writing system. Japanese is written with three different scripts: hiragana, katakana, and kanji, which is the one that we want to focus on today. Hiragana and katakana were developed in Japan, but kanji are actually Chinese characters that were adapted to fit the Japanese language. Kanji are logograms. A logogram is a character that represents a word or a meaningful part of a word. Kanji are not characters that you read phonetically, but rather each kanji represents a distinct idea rather than a sound. For example, this kanji on its own represents the concept of a mountain, but just from looking at it, there's no way to know that it's pronounced as yama. You have to remember how the character is pronounced, and when you see the character, you associate it with the sound. But some kanji do also contain a phonetic element, which is something we'll look at later. Japan initially came into contact with Chinese characters during diplomatic missions between the Han Dynasty and the Yamato state of Japan, which eventually led to the Japanese adoption and adaptation of kanji. I talk more about this in my video on the Japanese language, which you can find right here. If we include every kanji that has ever been used in Japanese, there are tens of thousands of them, but of course that includes many obscure or archaic kanji that really aren't worth learning for the average person. In 1946, the Japanese government aimed to simplify orthography by limiting the number of kanji to a smaller list of 1,850 kanji, known as the Toyo kanji, or common use kanji. That list has since been updated to include 2,136 basic kanji, which are referred to as the Joyo kanji, or regular use kanji. This list determines what kanji students are expected to learn at school and what kanji are used in official government documents. With this part of the reform, the Japanese government also simplified some of the more complex kanji so that they could be read more easily. These kanji are called shinjitai, which literally means new character forms. For example, this kanji meaning iron. The component on the right was simplified. And this kanji meaning wide. Its inner component was simplified, like this. You might be aware that such a simplification also occurred in the adoption of simplified Chinese writing in China, but shinjitai were much more limited in scope, and these changes only affected a limited number of characters in Japanese. Types of kanji. Kanji can be divided into several categories of moji, or characters, based on how each character is formed. For example, there are shokei moji. This refers to pictograph kanji, such as this one for mountain, or this one for tree. These ones look something like the objects that they represent. Shiji moji and kai moji are ideographs, characters that represent ideas rather than visually representing an object. For example, this kanji meaning up, and this one meaning rest. The difference between these two types of ideographs is that shiji moji are rather simple, whereas kai moji are compound ideographs that use multiple components that combine together to create an overall meaning, with each of the components also existing as independent kanji. The component on the left means person, and the component on the right means tree. A person leaning against the tree is resting. This is a good example of a kai moji. Another example is this kanji. Let's see if we can figure out what this one means by looking at the components. I see this character, which I know means mountain, and I see this one which means up, and this one which means down, so I'm going to guess that this kanji has something to do with traveling up or down a mountain, like maybe it's hiking. Now if we look at the actual meaning of this kanji, we'll see that it means a path through the mountains, or a mountain pass. So I'd say that's pretty close. This type of kanji that kind of tells a story is a kai moji, but only a small number of kanji tell a comprehensible story like that. By far, the largest grouping of kanji is keisei moji. These are kanji that combine semantic and phonetic elements to make up a new character. The phonetic element is derived from the Chinese pronunciation of the kanji, the onyomi, which we'll talk about later. A good example of keisei moji is shi, which means poem. If we look at the left side of the kanji, we see this component, which is most often used in characters that have something to do with language or speaking, such as this one, meaning language, and this one, meaning speaking. If we look at the component on the right side of this kanji, we see the kanji for temple. This doesn't indicate any semantic connection to temples, but rather it serves as an indicator of how to pronounce this kanji. The Chinese pronunciation of this kanji for temple is shi or ji, and when you see it as a component within another kanji, it indicates that that kanji is pronounced as shi or ji. Radicals. In the characters we looked at in the previous example of keisei moji, the component on the left is the radical. A radical is the main component of a kanji that generally provides a clue about its root meaning. Some people use the term radical to refer to any component of a kanji, like both of these, but to be precise, only this element is the radical, though both can be referred to as components. Every kanji contains one radical. Some radicals also exist as independent kanji, such as this one meaning gold or money. It appears as a radical with the root meaning of metal. Here we can see it in this kanji meaning iron, and in this one meaning copper. Other radicals only exist as an inseparable component of a kanji, like this one, which shows that the kanji has a meaning related to movement, like in this kanji meaning road, and this one meaning pass or communicate. As for phonetic components, they don't appear in all kanji, but they appear in many of them and can be very useful in pronouncing kanji. One example is this one, which we saw before in the kanji for copper. This kanji on its own is pronounced dou, and when you see it as a component in another kanji, it indicates that the pronunciation is dou or tou. As you can see, these kanji here have nothing to do with each other semantically, and the radicals are different. They're only related in pronunciation. Another quick example is this kanji meaning opposition. It's pronounced han. Now look at this kanji meaning cooked rice or meal. It's also pronounced han based on that phonetic element. And so is this one meaning sales, and this one meaning printing or publishing. They're all pronounced han. Well, they're sometimes pronounced han. Sometimes? What do you mean sometimes? The phonetic elements of kanji are based on the Chinese reading of the kanji, also known as the Onyomi reading. And yomi just means reading, by the way. Onyomi and kunyomi. If you remember from my previous video on Japanese, there are two basic ways to pronounce kanji. Onyomi, Chinese-derived readings, and kunyomi, native Japanese readings. For example, this character has a native kun reading of kata, while also having the on reading hen. When used in this word, hahen, meaning a broken piece, the onyomi is used. When used in this word, katamichi, meaning each way, the native kunyomi is used. The real complexity comes with the kanji that have multiple on readings and multiple kun readings, requiring you to choose the correct reading based on the context. One example is this kanji meaning life or birth. It has two onyomi readings, sei and shou. So we have this word jinsei, meaning human life, and this word chikusho, which means beast or damn it. And it also has numerous kunyomi readings. Here are some examples. There's ikiru, meaning to live. There's umu, meaning to give birth. There's ou, meaning to grow. There's haeru, meaning to grow or spring up. There's ki, meaning pure or raw. And there's nama, meaning raw or uncooked. As you can see, it's not always a simple matter of one kanji being equivalent to one word. The kanji is used to represent the core meaning of the word, but when we use them for native Japanese verbs and adjectives, a string of hiragana is attached to the end to represent the inflection of the word. For example, let's look at the adjective for cold, samui. As you can see, there's a kanji and the additional hiragana, I. The kanji carries the core meaning of the word, while the inflection, shown in hiragana, shows us that this word is in the non-past positive form for an I-type adjective. So we read this as samui, but when we inflect this word in the negative, it becomes samukunai, where kunai replaces I to indicate the non-past negative form. When we look at this word, we know to read it as samukunai, with the first two syllables represented by the kanji, and the others placed after it to show inflection. Kanji also work this way with verbs, where the kanji will represent the core meaning of the verb, and the hiragana represent the verb's conjugation. Why bother using kanji if part of the writing is in hiragana anyway? Even though kanji take a lot of effort to learn, they actually make the entire language easier to read. Let's take a look at an example sentence, first written without kanji, and next written with kanji. This sentence means, I eat Japanese food. Boku wa washoku o tabemasu. Because Japanese is written without spaces, without the kanji, the words all blend together, and it's sometimes difficult to quickly see where one word ends and where the next word begins, or it's difficult to see what part of speech a word is. Kanji are not really read, but just recognized like symbols, so they allow you to quickly skim a sentence for meaning. But while kanji make Japanese easier to read once you know them, they make Japanese much harder to write by hand. As you can see, some kanji consist of lots of different lines or strokes. For example, this kanji, meaning machine or opportunity, has 16 strokes. This one, meaning appraise, has 23 strokes. If we dig back into some historical kanji that are not part of the current Joyo kanji, some of them have quite a high number of strokes. This kanji, meaning rough or crude, has 33 strokes. You can see that this one is actually created through reduplication of the same component 3 times. That component is the kanji meaning deer. Here's another kanji meaning dragons on the move, which has 48 strokes and consists of the kanji for dragon reduplicated 3 times as components. And this kanji features the same component 4 times for a total of 64 strokes. It means verbose. The biggest freak show of a kanji is this one with 84 strokes. It features this kanji as a component, which is itself a reduplication of the kanji for cloud, and it also features the dragons on the move kanji as a component. I don't think the origins or usage of this kanji are very clear, but it may have been used in personal names. These high-stroke kanji are very rare, they're not really used anymore, but kanji of up to 20 strokes or even a little higher are quite common. Not only do you have to remember the strokes themselves, but you have to write them in the correct order and the correct direction. There are a series of rules that govern stroke order. The most basic rule is top to bottom and left to right. With the kanji for river, we can see that you write a stroke from top to bottom, then you move to the right and add 2 more strokes. But the first stroke seems to go from right to left. That's true, but here the top to bottom rule takes precedence, so this is allowed. Next, when vertical and horizontal strokes cross, the horizontal line is usually written first. We can see this in the kanji for 10. Next, vertical strokes that cross through other strokes are written after the strokes they cross through. We can see this in the kanji meaning middle or in. Horizontal strokes that cross through other strokes are written last. We can see this in the kanji for mother. Next, diagonal strokes are written right to left before left to right, as we can see in the kanji meaning letter or writings. Next, central vertical strokes are written before their wings. We can see this in the kanji meaning water. Next, left vertical strokes are written before strokes that go across and down, as we can see in the kanji meaning mouth. This across and down stroke is quite common, and it's important not to mistake it for 2 strokes, it's just 1 stroke. Next, enclosures are normally written before the components inside them. We can see that in the kanji meaning wide. An exception to that is some enclosures that have a bottom stroke, which are written last. We can see this in the kanji meaning near. And short little strokes or dashes are often written last, even if that contradicts the top to bottom rule. We can see this in the kanji meaning seek. Most of these stroke order rules become second nature after a while if you practice, but I must admit that I hardly ever write kanji by hand these days. These days people type on their smartphones and computers a lot more than they write by hand. When typing kanji on a smartphone or computer, you type the phonetic pronunciation, and then a list of kanji with that pronunciation appears, and you choose the appropriate one. A well-known result of this reliance on technology is that Japanese speakers' ability to write kanji by hand has declined. It's pretty common to see someone filling out a form or something and then pull out a smartphone to check how to write a certain kanji. It's important to point out that not every native speaker of Japanese will be able to read every kanji character that they encounter, especially in place names or personal names. It's not uncommon for me to ask a native speaker how to pronounce the name of a place, for example, and for them to tell me that they don't know. But they can often give it a shot based on what looks like a phonetic element in the kanji. And if they don't know the meaning, they might be able to guess the general meaning based on the radical of the kanji. While learning kanji is time-consuming and may seem overwhelming, remember that kanji are a part of Japanese culture, history, and literature, and if you treat them like a puzzle to solve or a mystery to unravel, then it becomes much more motivating and the kanji seem much less intimidating. The question of the day. For native speakers of Japanese, do you think kanji are necessary for the Japanese language? Would you be able to speak Japanese the same as you do now if kanji were not a part of the language? And for learners of Japanese, how much of a challenge are kanji for you? And how do you deal with the challenge? Be sure to follow Langfocus on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And once again, thank you to all of my amazing Patreon supporters, especially these ones right here on the screen, who are my top tier Patreon supporters. Thank you for watching and have a nice day.